Hello, Rick Kaempfer.
Hello, how are you two?
We're doing good.
So
Thanks for
happy to
having me
see
on.
you.
Yeah. This is the second time. The first time we talked to you, can you guys see
Oh
this? I
yeah.
think it was a year or so ago when you were talking about loop files, which, as people are thinking about really good reading,
Mm-hmm.
it's a fabulous book about iconic Chicago radio. Love it. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're going to play ball. Oh,
Whoa!
As long as we're holding
yeah.
books up, I thought,
Yeah,
Yes. We're going to talk about that. Every Cub ever.
the
And there is
seventh
no,
edition.
yes, and there is no false advertising here. This is every Cub ever. And I think I just scooped you because I told you before we hit record that I think it's no longer in pre-order. I think it's available for sale starting today,
yeah, that's
April
exciting.
2nd.
Hmm.
Yeah. But we're so excited to spend time with you. I was telling Wynne you have been kind of all over Chicago media just in the last couple of days, and your tour as you get to meet with all the big names, right, to promote the book. We're so thrilled that you would make time for our little podcast. So thank you again.
Happy
And
to do
yeah, but this title is no joke.
it.
This is every Cub ever from
Yeah,
1871 through 2024. And
yeah.
it's, bios and it's history and it's about the managers. And like Wynn said, this is the seventh edition. So, I mean, we would love for you to just tell us a little bit about the book. And then we've got some questions for you.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, it's about every Cub ever. So it's a little mini bio about every single player that ever played for the Cubs, including people that were there for just one day or one inning or one pitch or any manager. I tried to cover all of the broadcasters that ever worked for the
Yeah.
Cubs. Um, uh, a lot of front office people. But there are 2,600 entries in this book. I think
Gosh.
2,296 of them are players, and the rest are other Cubs related bios.
Yeah.
But it was a labor of love. I've worked on it for the better part of this century. When when I first turned it into my publisher, Dave, he said to me, "Have you ever kissed a girl?" Um, which I think was his way of saying I'm kind of a nerd, which I am. Yeah,
Is this like taking baseball cards and then just stepping it up 15
kind of.
notches?
Yeah,
I
kind of.
used to have a website called Just One Bad Century, which I started because I was trying to figure out how the Cubs had gone 100 years without winning a World Series. And then one year I decided to do this feature called Today's Cubs Birthdays. And by the end of the year, I realized that I must have done every single Cub because I did every single birthday.
Yeah.
There were still 50 or 100 that nobody knows what their birthdays were. So I went back and I wrote about them.
Mhm.
And then I was telling Dave about it. He's like, that's a book. And he's right. It's a book. And it's now 7 editions.
It's crazy. And so the was the last one I saw the fifth edition, right? Was the last one I think I touched, but there was a sixth, right?
Yeah,
And this is
there
the
was.
seventh. And
Well,
this
that's
one
the
you've,
thing I honestly didn't think through between us. When I turned it in the first time, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I can just update it. But
oh,
then I didn't think about how many new players come
Mm.
every year.
yeah.
And, one year there were like 75 players or something like that.
Wow.
They set a record for
Gosh.
most in one season. And at some point, I'm like, this is crazy. I can't spend 2 to 3 months of my life every year writing this book. And so this is the last edition
Yeah.
until they win the
It
World Series.
well, that's what you said on the promo. This is the last one
Yeah.
Yes,
until they win the World Series.
that's
Yeah.
right.
But I mean, maybe that's going to happen. I mean, what Carson Kelly did this week?
Yeah, that
Like,
was pretty
did
cool.
I know, first cycle Like not just for the Cubs for this season, but first cycle period. Did I get that right?
Uh, the first cycle for the Cubs since the 90s or something like that.
But has
So,
any other team done that? Any other player yet?
yeah, I think he was the first catcher to do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're gonna have to
Amazing.
tell us non-Cubs what the story is.
So
Oh,
the Cubs won the
yeah.
other day, like I don't know, like 14-3 or something like that,
I
and
think
then
it was
they
18 to 3.
18-3.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
And their backup catcher, who doesn't play very much, got the start, and
Mm.
he hit for the cycle, which is getting a single, a double, a triple, and a home run in the
Oh,
same game.
Wow.
like
Wow.
And the
crazy.
last one he hit was the triple, which is the hardest one to get. And he's slow. He's a catcher. So the whole team was cheering for him as he slowly trudged his way around the bases.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was kind of a fun thing to watch.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing,
Yeah,
right? And I think the thing that everyone was talking about was not since Mark Grace, right?
correct.
Which
Yeah,
is, that's a heyday thinking
right. But
about
that's a
that.
story that's not in the book because
Oh,
it's already past my deadline. So
Right, right,
yeah.
right,
this
right.
is the frustration I feel I'm sharing with you.
Yes.
Well, and I think you're being threatening about, give me a World Series or I'm
Yeah,
out, but
or
I
else.
don't know. I don't
Yeah.
think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a little bit of my frustration talking there. But,
Yeah.
it was a labor of love. It's no longer a labor of love, but it's still great stories in there.
Yes.
Well, we talk about, writing a book is sort of like birthing a baby, but,
Yeah,
they never stay static either. So,
true.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and such a labor of love. And the thing that I've loved as I've listened to you talk about the book a little bit this week is, it's great for baseball fans, but it's also amazing for people that are history buffs. And
Yeah, there's
so,
a lot of
yeah,
history
tell
in there.
us.
So,
Yeah.
I intentionally, when I wrote this book, I didn't want it to be, about stats.
Yeah.
There are so many books out there. He hit 14 homers and 35 RBIs or whatever. I was not as interested in that as I am in the stories.
Yeah.
And so I went through to try to find at least one little nugget about each of these players. And it goes all the way back to 1871. I mean, so there were teams. There was a one season before the Chicago fire,
Mm,
which then burned down the city and burned down their stadium,
mm.
and so they didn't play again for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I went all the way back and went to the Chicago Historical Society, went through their microfiche. Remember microfiche?
Yeah, I
And
don't want
found
to, but
the
I do. Yeah.
and found the articles about those players and found some really cool stories. I mean, there are players that were, heroes. There were players that were Civil War heroes. There was
Mm,
a Cub that rode up San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt.
mm.
There was a Cub who was on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day.
Wow.
Um, there was a Cub that became a uh, governor of the state of Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And there were also Cubs that became, crooks. And there was a
Right.
jewel thief. There was
Mm.
a murderer. There was someone who hired a hitman to kill his wife. I
Oh
mean,
no.
and there was another one who slashed the throat of another person. I mean, they're really harsh stuff, and especially in those early days.
Yeah.
But fascinating stories.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it
But
colors it all up, right?
yeah.
Like you said, so it's not just, a statistics book about baseball, but it shows how baseball cuts through culture,
Yeah.
time periods, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of probably like a dozen Native American Cubs, and all of their nicknames, each one of them, I'm not kidding, were
Hmm.
called Chief.
Ooh,
So I mean,
yeah.
there were, politically incorrect times. There was a
Yeah.
Cub catcher on the 1908 Cubs, which won the World Series,
Mhm.
His name was Johnny Kling. His nickname was the Jew.
Oh man.
Oh my
You know what I
gosh.
Wow.
mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a different time, but it
Right.
was,
Yeah.
legitimate history.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other big story is that there was a Cubs player named Cap Anson, who was a Hall of Famer, who was the reason that there was a color line. The whole Jackie Robinson breaking the color line and black
Yeah.
players were not allowed to play. Cap
Yeah.
Anson is the one that installed it. He was a Cub,
No
and
kidding.
he would not play on the field if there was a black player, and the
Wow.
whole league decided to kowtow to him, and that's
Wow.
why
Wow.
that happened.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, and
So,
I'd
so
Yeah.
forgotten about this until you just mentioned it, but you're going to the Hall of Fame this year. You were
I am.
invited to the induction ceremony, right?
I am.
Tell
But
us
here's
about that.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
do you get
so we
invited to that?
Yeah.
we published a book. I'm also a publisher in addition to being a writer, called Chili Dog MVP, and it was about a Chicago White Sox player actually named Dick Allen,
Hmm.
who this year is being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And the family of Dick Allen was so appreciative of this book because they believe that it actually helped the voters
Yeah.
realize that he belonged in the Hall of Fame, that they sent us all personal invites to come and be there when he's inducted, which is a big thrill. I can't wait.
And
That's
he's still
wonderful.
alive, right?
No,
Dick
he
Allen.
just passed away.
Oh,
That's the sad
really?
part.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
I love the storytelling aspect of what you do though here. I mean, it's because baseball, we were talking about some go-to metaphors, baseball
Yeah.
really has it all, from the home runs to the curveballs,
Yeah.
to the um, strikeouts, all those metaphors that we live and breathe. And then, you take that um it even further with the stories that you've developed here.
Yeah, I just was reading one this morning that I was reminded of, and that's there was a pitcher named Jack Harper
Mm,
who pitched for the Cincinnati Reds, and he beamed, hit Frank Chance, who was the Cubs manager, hit him in the forehead a couple of times with fastballs, and
mm.
one time knocked him out cold.
Ooh.
So Frank Chance traded for Jack Harper just to ruin his career.
Oh,
He
man.
And
he traded for him, put him on the end of the bench, and never played him again. And the guy never pitched in the big leagues again after that.
wow.
Wow. Yeah, but it's like
Right.
a microcosm of like real life
Yeah.
grudges,
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
right?
Hmm.
It covers sort of like
Yeah.
all of humanity.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, but there's also something that I think is just so, even if you're not a baseball fan, there's something inherently hopeful about baseball,
Hmm.
right? It's just things start, at least where we live, when things finally
Hmm.
start to green up a little bit.
Right.
And it's something to look forward to. And I think the sights, the sounds,
Hmm.
all of
Smells.
that. Yeah.
There's something to that for sure. And being
Yeah.
a Cubs fan, which I've sadly been since 1968, that gave you hope, even though we lost every year. The
Hmm.
Cub fans on the first day of the year, every year, we're like, all right, this is our year. You know, how
Yeah.
many times do you need to be punched before you realize
Yeah.
it's not going to work out?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one time it did. So,
Yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know if this is true for, other beleaguered sports teams, but I think for Cubs fans, there's like this like, intergenerational thing, where
Mhm.
moms and daughters, fathers and sons across the
Mhm.
generations, you
Yeah.
still go to the games, you go when it's raining, you stay till the end, the extra innings don't throw you. You take it
Yeah.
all in and you remain hopeful. And I think that's something, at least in my experience with being a baseball fan, it's unique to being in the Chicago area and being a Cubs fan.
And they've been around for 150 years, which is
Yeah.
another thing, and
Mhm.
my uncle
Yeah.
Manny was the one that turned me into a Cubs fan. And
Mhm.
my family just moved here in the late 50s, so we're, new new Americans, and he
Mhm.
immediately was taken with the sport and became a Cubs fan, even though the Cubs were terrible in the 50s. I mean, really, really terrible.
Oh yeah. Oh. Hmm.
But he turned me into a Cubs fan, and then I have now turned my three sons into Cubs fans too. So it does
So
carry on.
good. Yeah.
Well, we were talking before we started recording about Little League and coaching your three sons through Little League and my son starting Little League. And it's so, again, that feeling of spring, the sound of the bat,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
playing in the dirt. It's
yeah.
just, it's such a fun outing for everyone.
I would do that again if I could,
Yeah.
go back in time. That was my favorite part of being a dad was
Mhm.
those years like between age 5 and 10 when they were just learning the sport and just,
Yeah.
embracing it, sucking it
Mhm.
in, and just loving every second of it. You could
Mhm.
see the big smiles
Yeah.
on their faces when
Mhm.
they made a play or hit the ball. I would do that again in a
Yeah.
Hmm.
second if
Yeah.
I could.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
There's
Wouldn't
a
that be
great quote,
cool?
and I can't think about from whom, but kids never tell you what's wrong. They just go ask to go throw, go play ball.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
when they work, you work all sorts of stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to know one of the things that in the promo for Every Cub Ever, there are like 500 new entries, which is kind of like mind blowing. But also, there's a reference you make to like 200 new photos, or is it 200 photos total? How do you choose when you've got that much to work with, what to include and what makes the cut? And
Well, the first six editions had no photos because you have to pay for them.
yeah.
They cost money. But I discovered through the Library of Congress that there are all sorts of photos that are available that are now in public domain because they're
Mm.
over, I think,
Ah.
95 years old.
Mm.
And a lot of them are very old pictures of some of the, very first players that ever played for the Cubs. And then there were two baseball card companies that went out of business
Mm,
and they put all of their photos in public domain too.
Mm.
And
cool.
so that's how I got the pictures. I didn't have the opportunity to get those in the first six editions,
Mhm.
but now they're in there.
Just it adds so much, right?
It
Right.
does. I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the book it's out starting today, so we want to know, because I'm sure you were working really hard to hit this like opening day. We got to get to like the first week in April. I'm sure, right? All
Yes, exactly.
cylinders were firing to do that, but now you're there.
Yeah.
So tell folks how they can get it, where it's available.
So here's an easy way to remember it. EveryCubEver.com. If you
I
type
like
that
it.
in, it'll go right to my page on the Eckhart's Press website. It'll also be on Amazon, I think, but don't go to Amazon. Don't. Go
We
to
hear
go
you.
to Eckhart's Press,
Right. Right.
a humble little
Yes.
publisher, and
Support our publishers. We need that.
e-
Please,
exactly,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and while people are there, you've written, is it 14 books? And you were just talking about you and your boys. Wynne and I love Father Knows Nothing,
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's
right?
some
But you've
good
written a
baseball
lot.
stories in that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. But you've written lots of other things. So
I have.
we've got to poke you a little bit and ask what you're going to be working on next.
Boy, that's a great question. I'm finally exhaling
Mm.
after having written this one, so I'm not 100% sure where I'm going next. But in the meantime, I'm publishing other people's books. I don't know if you've heard of a book called Surviving Sue that is also available on that
Hmm,
website.
sounds
Mhm.
familiar. I
Mhm.
don't
I
know.
recommend that one.
Yeah,
That's a
that's a
good
good
book.
Thank
one.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear that author was invited to go to a couple of libraries coming up this summer. Yeah. Hmm.
Mm.
I'd like to hear more about that in a
Yeah.
future episode of this
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh,
That's a
look
good,
at you. Yeah.
I'm a
you know,
professional. I've
yeah.
been
Yeah.
doing this a long time.
Yeah. We can see. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this seventh edition, is there one story that sticks out that was your favorite story to write for this?
That's a good one. let me think. All right, here's one. Um, I found out about this man named Oscar Bilasky. Oscar Bilasky. He was in the on the Cubs in 1875 and
Wow.
1876. And it turns out that he was a Civil War hero, um, and fought in, the New York Regiment or something like that. And when he died, he was buried in Arlington Cemetery. He's the only Cub that is buried in Arlington Cemetery.
Wow.
But here's the thing that I just found out. His son became the director of the FBI, as shortly, I think, the year after his father died, and his son was became a very important figure in the United States government.
Wow.
So you just never know where these stories are going to lead. My favorite
Mhm.
thing to do, and this sounds kind of depressing, but my favorite thing to do is to read their obituaries,
Mm.
because in
Yeah.
their obituaries you find out what they did after their
Right.
baseball career, and some of
Yeah.
these guys have some great stuff. I mean, everything from became a dentist to
Wow.
Yeah.
became a ran a mortuary, and then there was one that was sent to prison and
Mm.
escaped prison and killed a
Mm.
cop, and just all kinds of really interesting stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, that surprises me about the story that you just told us because I my assumption when you said that you had a new edition was that you just added all the people since you published last, but you're updating stories
I'm
from
constantly
amazing.
looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just because I'm interested in it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my nerdness.
right?
Whenever I see like a mention of a Cub, and now I've kind of got an encyclopedic knowledge of the
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
players that play for the Cubs,
Right.
something snaps in my head. I'm like, oh, I got to write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
But I
have
think
some
that adds so much
right?
richness.
It
Yeah.
does. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have
Thank
some
you.
sort of like Google alert that says, that searches for any like so and so was brought up from the minors to play for the Cubs? Like, do you get some sort of
Yeah.
Yes, I have several Google alerts that I use.
amazing?
I
Yeah,
like it.
That's a
I
brilliant,
like it.
brilliant, as is the book.
thank you.
Yeah, but I think all those things that you do to add richness, you were thinking
Mhm.
about Mother's Day coming up, gift giving, obviously for Father's Day, but I think you don't have to be a baseball fan or a diehard Cubs fan, because of everything that you two were just talking about. There's a historical kind of richness and a storytelling about people's lives. Like you
Right.
said,
Mhm.
if you made it to the majors, you wanted to stay,
Mhm.
but the guy who became a dentist and
Well,
the
here's a
guy,
Mother's Day one. You want a
yeah.
Mother's Day story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Cubs center fielder this year, Pete Crow Armstrong,
Yeah.
his mother is an actress, and she
Oh.
starred in, I forget which baseball movie. I don't have it here in front of me, either Angels in the Outfield or
Mm.
Little Big Man or something like that.
Wow.
She starred as the mother of a kid who wants to be a major leaguer in the movie, and then her real son became a major leaguer.
Do you have her phone number? I feel like she's maybe like she's got connections we could
Yeah.
use. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what,
Hmm.
Vicky, I think Rick just hit it out of the park with that one.
Oh, another one. That's
Oh,
great.
oh, over the fence, past the not quite yet ivy, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
good.
yeah, I think it's good stuff. And we're
Yeah.
like so happy that you put the time in. And like Wynne said, it's not just kind of adding to the end, going, and here's, what you need to know, about who's been on the roster. It's adding, all that flavoring it up, which makes it
Mhm.
super cool.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, all the best. It's so nice to spend time with you, and we'll
Absolutely.
promote and encourage and just grateful for your friendship and grateful for your effort. This is a great book.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
You're
Rick. So
welcome.
nice to talk to you.
Bye.